there, my name is Elena Contreras, and I have a very important question to pose to you. We normally talk about LGBTQ plus policies and experiences here in the US, but have you ever taken a moment to think about these policies and experiences on a global scale? Well, if you answer no to that question, that is completely okay, because that is exactly what we will be doing today. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. First and foremost, let's take a closer look at LGBTQ plus policies and experiences right here in the US. The second decade of the 21st century has been marked by specific improvements in employment, marriage, and housing protections for LGBTQ plus people, along with several challenges to equality. In 2010, President Obama signed the law ending the Clinton-era Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy, thereby allowing openly lesbian, gay, and bisexual identified individuals to serve in the military. That same year, the Florida ban on same-sex adoption was lifted statewide when the 3rd District Court of Appeals indicated no rational basis for the law. In 2016, the U.S. Department of Defense issued policy statements allowing transgender service members the right to enlist and serve openly in the military. However, in 2018, President Donald Trump announced that there would be a ban on transgender people serving in the military. As a result, the U.S. District Court of the Western District of Washington ruled in Karnofsky v. Trump that the move was not only a violation of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, but also unconstitutional. Such significant progress was sadly met with a number of setbacks. However, such a wave of state-level legislation in 2017 intended to restrict access for gender-diverse individuals to multi-user restrooms, locker rooms, and other sex-segregated facilities. 16 states considered adding such restrictions, with North Carolina being the only U.S. state to pass and later repeal them. Also in 2017, 6 states considered preempting county and local ordinances from anti-discrimination laws. At the same time, 14 states considered legislation that would limit the rights of transgender youth at school. In 2019, both Colorado and New Mexico joined several other states in making the gender marker X available for the first time on driver's licenses while eliminating a gender surgery requirement. Despite employment-based protections for sexual orientation and gender identity via an existing patchwork of laws across several U.S. states, efforts to protect LGBTQ+ workers at the federal level through the Employment Non-Discrimination Act failed to gain political traction. In 2020, the U.S. Supreme Court considered 3 different cases in an attempt to determine whether or not discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity was legal under the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The court ultimately ruled on all 3 cases collectively, thus banning employment discrimination based on race, religion, national origin, and sex. This also includes sexual orientation and gender identity. A study showed that many LGBTQ+ people continue to face discrimination in their personal lives, in the workplace, and the public sphere. Their access to critical health care also remained an issue. Younger generations generally reported higher levels of discrimination and attendant problems than older generations, and problems associated with discrimination are most pronounced among transgender individuals, individuals of color, and disabled individuals. A study completed with the LGBTQ+ community within the U.S. resulted in the following results. More than 1 in 3 LGBTQ+ Americans face discrimination of some kind in the past year, including more than 3 in 5 transgender Americans. Discrimination adversely affects the mental and economic well-being of many LGBTQ+ Americans, including 1 in 2 who report moderate or significant negative psychological impacts. To avoid the experience of discrimination, more than half of LGBTQ+ Americans report hiding a personal relationship, and about 1/5 to 1/3 have altered other aspects of their personal work or lives. Around 3 in 10 LGBTQ+ Americans faced difficulties last year accessing necessary medical care due to cost issues, including more than half of transgender Americans. 15% of LGBTQ+ Americans report postponing or avoiding medical treatment due to discrimination, including nearly 3 in 10 transgender individuals. Transgender individuals face unique obstacles to accessing health care, including 1 in 3 who had to teach their doctor about transgender individuals in order to receive appropriate care. These findings provide crucial insights into the experiences of those within the LGBTQ+ community. Now that we have covered LGBTQ plus policies and experiences here in the US, we're going to take it to a more global scale. While there are many countries and several different cultures that we can go over, we're going to stick to the top 4 for time constraint. We're going to start in Africa, fly on over to Asia, zip way over to Europe, and then land in South America. Let's go. Now let's travel way over to Africa, where we can dive into more LGBTQ plus experiences and policies that greatly differ from that of the USA. Last year, Africa witnessed a surge in discriminatory legislation against LGBTQ plus individuals. In a briefing that looked at 12 African countries, Amnesty International documents showed how legal systems were increasingly weaponized in 2023 to systematically target and discriminate against LGBTQ plus individuals. This included instances where the laws were egregiously employed to persecute and marginalize members of the LGBTQ plus community. It's found that across Africa, LGBTQ plus persons find themselves contending with the disturbing regression of progress, facing relentless protests against their identities and confronting formidable obstacles to their legal and social rights. In Africa, 31 countries still criminalize consensual same-sex sexual activity despite the clear contradiction with established African Union and international human rights standards. In Uganda, for instance, where consensual same-sex activity was already illegal, the situation has worsened with passage of the Anti-Homosexuality Act in 2023. In Ghana, LGBTQ plus persons continue to endure persistent discrimination and a range of human rights violations. In Malawi, LGBTQ plus persons face an alarming and hostile environment with discriminatory legislation and ongoing human rights violations, creating an atmosphere for fear and oppression. The refusal to repeal homophobic legislation has left LGBTQ plus persons vulnerable to harassment and discrimination on a daily basis. In Kenya, a member of parliament has proposed the 2023 Family Protection Bill. This draft legislation raises concerns as it includes measures that could limit fundamental rights such as assembly, privacy, and access to sexual and reproductive health information and services. The bill aims to prohibit consensual same-sex sexual conduct, same-sex marriage, and activities related to them, which would have significant implications for human rights. Now let's talk about how LGBTQ plus policies and experiences are like in Asia. Keep in mind that there are some similarities and differences, especially in the experiences within this group. In Asia, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people in the People's Republic of China face legal and social challenges that are not experienced by non-LGBTQ plus residents. While both male and female same-sex sexual activity are legal, same-sex couples are currently unable to marry or adopt, and households headed by such couples are ineligible for the same legal protections available to heterosexual couples. No explicit anti-discrimination protections for LGBTQ plus people are present in its legal system, nor do hate crime laws cover sexual orientation or gender identity. Founded in 2008, the Beijing LGBTQ Center had played a prominent role in combating prejudice against sexual and gender minorities in China. On May 15th, 4 days after its 15th anniversary and 2 days before the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia, the center said on its official WeChat account that it was closing because of forced protocol, which in China often refers to being shut down by the government. The center's closing comes as officials are trying to increase the birth rate to address demographic concerns in China, which reported its first population decline in decades this year and is being overtaken by India as the world's most populous nation. LGBTQ people in China say that their safe spaces have been squeezed under President Xi Jinping, who has overseen a crackdown on advocacy groups since coming to power a decade ago. The pressure has only intensified under a 2017 law that increased regulation of international, non-governmental organizations. Additionally, there has also been an increase in government censorship, including a ban on effeminate men on TV, as well as shows about close male relationships known as boys' love dramas. China censors LGBTQ plus content, including LGBTQ plus themed films, TV shows, and media. According to The Guardian, the Chinese government has banned all depictions of gay individuals on television, calling it vulgar, immoral, and unhealthy content. Since October 1st, 2017, a system that is in use for same-sex couples was enacted called legal guardianship or guardianship agreement. The system grants same-sex couples some limited rights such as medical care, property management, and other additional rights that can be expressed through different documents the couple may sign. Overall, homosexuality is legal in China, but there are still implications for more services to be provided, as LGBTQ plus individuals are not legally protected against discrimination overall. Next, let's travel over to Europe. There is a particular survey completed in regards to LGBTQ plus experiences that I wanted to highlight as I found the results extremely interesting. Let's take a closer look. Since November 30th, 2000, homosexuality activity in the United Kingdom is legal. Gender-affirming care in the United Kingdom is legal, but is banned for minors since June 3rd, 2024. On May 29, 2024, the United Kingdom voted to, quote, close the loophole by banning private care physicians as well as prescribers registered in the European Economic Area or Switzerland from prescribing puberty blockers to children for gender incongruence. Those who already had a prescription can continue their treatment. This measure is set to last from June 3rd until September 3rd, but could be extended. 20% of the population believe that school forms should only have male and female identities on registration forms within schools. 12% feel let down that their child's school is not being LGBTQ plus inclusive. Within the trans community, 16% feel let down that their child's school is not being LGBTQ plus inclusive. 5% agree to have their children homeschooled to avoid anti-LGBTQ plus prejudice. 4% of bisexual parents have decided to homeschool their children to avoid anti-LGBTQ plus prejudice. 11% of trans parents have decided to homeschool their children to avoid anti-LGBTQ plus prejudice. 23% of gay and trans parents have felt depressed or anxious about their family facing discrimination. Lastly, in regards to support for same-sex marriage, according to June 2024, 78% of the population support, 14% oppose, and 18% don't know. As with any area of discussion, let's end this on a positive note and travel over to one of my favorite areas, South America. Over the last decade, Latin America has stood out for its recognition of LGBTQ plus rights. Outside of the Caribbean, the majority of countries in the region have decriminalized same-sex sexual acts between consenting adults. In Bolivia, Cuba, Ecuador, and Mexico, LGBTQ plus individuals are constitutionally protected from discrimination based upon sexual orientation. Elsewhere, many of the region's constitutions now include broad, non-discrimination clauses that offer some protection to LGBTQ plus citizens. Since 2010, 8 countries have approved laws prohibiting discrimination based on sexual orientation. Latin America has also made impressive progress on marriage equality. In 2010, Argentina became the first country in the region to approve same-sex marriage. 20,000 same-sex Argentinian couples have since married. In 2013, neighboring Brazil and Uruguay followed suit, and later Colombia in 2016, Ecuador in 2019, and Costa Rica in 2020. In 2019, the Mexican Supreme Court declared bans on same-sex marriage unconstitutional. In Chile, President Sebastián Piñera vowed earlier this month to advance a marriage equality bill stalled in Congress since 2017. However, a number of obstacles still stand in the way of further progress. LGBTQ plus activists face backlash from social and religious conservatives and some other leaders. In the Eastern Caribbean, Human Rights Watch has condemned discriminatory legislation that leaves LGBTQ plus populations, quote, ready victims of discrimination, violence, and abuse. Thank you so much for engaging with me in this presentation. I hope that you found the information to be informative and that it has expanded your knowledge on LGBTQ plus policies and experiences, not just here in the US, but on a global scale. Until next time, bye.